The story of how the Messerschmitt Bf 109 came to shape Israel's first fighter force begins long before Israel itself existed, rooted in the interwar ambitions of Germany and the brutal realities of total war. Conceived in the early 1930s, the Messerschmitt Bf 109 emerged from a Germany determined to rebuild its military power in defiance of post-World War I restrictions. Designed by Willy Messerschmitt, the aircraft reflected a new philosophy in fighter-designed compact, lightweight, and optimized for speed and climb rather than endurance or pilot comfort. When it first flew in 1935, it represented a sharp break from the biplanes and transitional monoplanes still common across Europe. As Germany roamed, the Bf 109 became the Luftwaffe's primary single-seat fighter, evolving rapidly as war loomed. Early variants entered service during the Spanish Civil War, where they provided invaluable combat data and exposed both strengths and weaknesses. These lessons shaped the aircraft that would enter World War II in 1939. Fast, well-armed for its time, and capable of being produced in large numbers. During the invasions of Poland and France, the Bf 109 helped secure German air superiority, its performance often outclassing Allied fighters. It became synonymous with blitzkrieg, escorting bombers and hunting enemy aircraft with ruthless efficiency. Yet the very qualities that made the Bf 109 successful early in the war also imposed long-term limitations. Its narrow landing gear, designed to reduce drag and weight, made takeoffs and landings hazardous, especially from rough or improvised airstrips. As the war progressed, successive upgrades added heavier weapons, more armor, and increasingly powerful engines, pushing the airframe to its limits. By the time of the Battle of Britain and the later campaigns on the Eastern Front, the Bf 109 was still formidable, but increasingly demanding to fly and maintain. Germany's expanding war effort placed enormous strain on its industrial base. To sustain fighter production under constant Allied bombing, manufacturing was dispersed across occupied Europe. Czechoslovakia, with its skilled workforce and established aviation industry, became a crucial hub. Factories there produced components and assembled complete Bf 109 airframes, particularly during the later stages of the war. As conditions deteriorated in 1944 and 1945, production became chaotic. Aircraft were rushed off assembly lines, often incomplete, as Germany fought a losing battle on multiple fronts. When the Third Reich collapsed in May 1945, these factories and stockpiles were abruptly cut off from their original purpose. Scattered across hangars and warehouses were partially completed fighters, spare parts, tools, and blueprints, material evidence of a war machine that no longer existed. For the newly re-established Czechoslovak state, these remnants presented both a challenge and an opportunity. The country needed to rebuild its economy and its armed forces, and aviation was one of the few sectors where it possessed immediate, tangible assets. Rather than scrap the unfinished aircraft, Czechoslovak authorities chose to complete them. Initially, the intention was straightforward: finish the Bf 109s using available components and adapt them for post-war service. But this plan quickly encountered obstacles. The sophisticated Daimler-Benz engines that powered the fighter were in short supply, damaged, or entirely unavailable. Wartime destruction and post-war dislocation made replacement parts scarce. Engineers were forced to improvise, using whatever could be salvaged or substituted. This moment marked a critical turning point in the Bf 109's post-war journey. What had been a symbol of German air power was now stripped of its original context, its ideological meaning dissolved by defeat. The airframes themselves, however, retained their aerodynamic shape and combat potential. They were no longer instruments of conquest, but industrial artifacts awaiting a new role. In the unstable political climate of post-war Europe, weapons quickly became commodities, traded and transferred according to emerging alliances and urgent needs. The transformation of the Messerschmitt Bf 109 from a frontline Luftwaffe fighter into Israel's first combat aircraft was defined not by careful redesign, but by improvisation under extreme constraints. In post-war Czechoslovakia, engineers faced the challenge of completing fighter airframes without access to the precise components that had made the original aircraft successful. The most critical absence was the Daimler-Benz DB605 engine, the heart of the later Bf 109 variants. These engines were either destroyed, seized, or rendered unusable by the chaos of Germany's collapse. What remained in sufficient numbers was the Junkers Jumo 211, a reliable but fundamentally mismatched power plant originally designed for bombers such as the Ju-87 and Ju-88. Installing this engine into a fighter airframe created an aircraft that was mechanically functional but aerodynamically compromised. The Jumo 211 was heavier, produced different torque characteristics, and required a larger propeller. This shifted the aircraft's center of gravity forward, altering its handling in ways that could not be fully corrected. The resulting fighter, designated the Avia S.199, retained the unmistakable silhouette of the Bf 109, but its flying qualities were dramatically changed. On the ground, the aircraft was dangerous. The Bf 109's narrow landing gear had always been a weakness even in German service. With the heavier engine and increased torque, the S.199 became notoriously unstable during takeoff and landing. Sudden swings, ground loops, and nose-overs were common, especially on rough or improvised airstrips. For pilots transitioning from trainers or transport aircraft, the S.199 offered little forgiveness. Accidents were frequent, sometimes fatal, even before the aircraft reached combat. In the air, performance was uneven. The S.199 was slower than late, wore Allied fighters and climbed more sluggishly than its German predecessors. Its controls were heavier and its response less precise, particularly at low speeds. Yet it still possessed one critical advantage. It was a single-seat, armed fighter capable of offensive action. Its standard armament included synchronized machine guns mounted above the engine, supplemented in some configurations by additional wing-mounted weapons. While vibration and synchronization issues sometimes plagued the guns, the aircraft could still deliver lethal firepower against ground targets and enemy aircraft caught at a disadvantage. For Israel in 1948, these limitations mattered less than availability. At the moment of independence, the country faced invasion by multiple armies while lacking any meaningful air defense. International embargoes prevented legal acquisition of modern aircraft, leaving few options. The S.199, despite its flaws, was immediately obtainable and could be flown into combat within weeks. Its lineage from the Bf 109 meant that, at the very least, it was built around a combat-proven airframe designed to survive high stresses and battlefield damage. Training posed another severe challenge. Many of the pilots who would fly these aircraft had limited experience on high-performance fighters. Transitioning to a machine as temperamental as the S.199 demanded skill, discipline, and courage. Manuals were incomplete, spare parts scarce, and maintenance crews often learned through trial and error. Every sortie carried the risk of mechanical failure or pilot error, yet missions continued because the alternative was to surrender the skies entirely. Technologically, the S.199 represented the twilight of World War II fighter design. It lacked radar, advanced navigation aids, or modern fire control systems. Its cockpit was cramped, visibility restricted by the long nose and heavy framing, and instrumentation minimal. Yet these shortcomings were typical of late war fighters, and pilots relied on visual navigation, dead reckoning, and instinct. In this sense, the aircraft was a pure expression of WWI aviation, raw, mechanical, and unforgiving. The paradox of the S.199 lay in its dual identity. It was both a degraded version of a once elite fighter and a crucial instrument of survival. Its German origins were unmistakable, but its purpose had been completely transformed. Where the Bf 109 had once escorted bombers and enforced air superiority for an aggressive power, its descendant now flew defensive missions, buying time and space for a nation struggling to survive its first days. The Avia S.199 entered combat at a moment when timing mattered more than technical excellence. In May 1948, as Israel declared independence, hostile armies advanced from multiple directions, and the new state possessed almost no means to contest the air. There were no layered defenses, no trained interceptor squadrons, and no depth to absorb losses. Into this vacuum stepped a handful of fighters descended from a World War II design, flown by pilots who understood that simply appearing over the battlefield could alter events on the ground. The first combat sorties flown by the Avia S.199 were improvised and urgent. Missions were planned hastily, often without radios, proper maps, or reliable intelligence. Aircraft took off from rough desert strips carved out of farmland, loaded with minimal fuel and weapons. Pilots were ordered not to seek air superiority in the classic sense, but to strike advancing columns, disrupt supply routes, and, most importantly, signal that Israel possessed an operational air arm. These early attacks were crude by World War II standards. Low-level strafing runs replaced coordinated bombing, and precision gave way to intimidation. Yet the psychological impact was immediate. Enemy forces, many of which had assumed Israel lacked any combat aircraft, suddenly faced fighters attacking from the air. Columns dispersed, movements slowed, and caution replaced momentum. In the opening days of the war, this hesitation proved invaluable, buying time for ground forces to reorganize and defensive lines to solidify. The cost was high. The S.199's unforgiving handling took a steady toll on pilots, even in non-combat situations. Takeoffs and landings were perilous, especially after long missions when fatigue set in. Mechanical failures were frequent, spare parts scarce, and maintenance crews worked under extreme pressure to keep aircraft flying. Some losses occurred without any enemy contact at all, reinforcing the aircraft's grim reputation among those assigned to it. In aerial combat, the S.199 was rarely superior to opposing aircraft and was often avoided in dogfights unless circumstances were favorable. Pilots relied on surprise, altitude, and quick disengagement rather than prolonged engagements. When used as a fighter-bomber, its limitations were more tolerable. Against ground targets, speed and the ability to deliver even modest firepower were enough to achieve tactical effects. Each successful sortie reinforced the illusion of a larger, more capable air force than actually existed. As weeks passed and additional aircraft types began to arrive through other channels, the S.199's role gradually diminished. It was never intended to be a long-term solution, and its shortcomings became increasingly apparent as operational demands increased. By late 1948, it was being withdrawn from frontline service, replaced by fighters that were safer to fly and more effective in combat. Its operational lifespan was short, but intensely concentrated at a decisive moment. The legacy of the Avia S.199 cannot be measured by kill counts or technical achievements. Its true contribution lay in presence and timing. In the earliest days of the war, when Israel's survival hung in the balance, it provided the only means to contest the air. It forced enemies to react rather than advance unchecked. It gave ground forces confidence that they were not alone, and it established, however imperfectly, the foundation of an air force. There is a profound historical irony in this outcome. An aircraft descended from a fighter designed to serve the Luftwaffe, a symbol of a regime responsible for immense destruction, became a tool in the defense of a Jewish state. Stripped of ideology, the machine was repurposed by circumstance, its meaning transformed by those who flew it. In this transformation lies one of the most striking reversals in aviation history.